It was a novella written by Truman Capote, and we optioned the rights, took them into Paramount. So we started what is usually called in the entertainment industry development hell and started developing the screenplay.
I love the screenplay, but I've loved a lot of screenplays that haven't made it. So I wasn't foolish enough to make that a part of my consideration for doing it or not. I would have done it if I had to crawl all the way up the Walk of Fame, you know. That was a big opportunity for me.
Audrey was under contract to Paramount. We just thought she would be wonderful in it. Paramount didn't think she would play it because she was such a kind of sweet and proprietary kind of lady that they didn't think she would play a part where a woman gets $50 to go to the powder room.
Certainly in her mind, and understandably so, it was a big jump from the Capote Holly Golightly to our film's Holly Golightly, and she just didn't know whether she could do that sort of thing.
I thought she did a wonderful job. I liked it because she was very naive, and it was like playing against that character. And I think that's what it takes to play that part and get away with it, you know?
I just told her I thought she would be absolutely great, not to expect her to be the Holly Golightly of Truman's book.
I don't even want to own anything until I can find a place where me and things go together. I'm not sure where that is, but I know what it's like. It's like Tiffany's.
You mean the jewelry store?
That's right. I'm crazy about Tiffany's.
Truman Capote originally visualized Marilyn Monroe in the part, and she probably would have been allowed to play the character as he had created her in the book, but they unfortunately wouldn't let Audrey do that.
You kind of would have expected Marilyn, who, you know, was very sexy, she was kind of obvious for the part, and so we thought we could do better. And when Audrey said she would do it, even though Paramount didn't think she would, that's how we got her.
I don't think that the majority of the audience in those days really ever thought of Audrey Hepburn as a hooker, as a call girl. I bet you they didn't even, when it was over with, they didn't even know. So $50 for the powder room? So she was an escort lady.
I found myself wishing that she could have done the part as written. People didn't know how earthy and how true to life Audrey was, how aware she was of whatever went on in the world.
But she took something which was one way and turned it completely into something else, up to the point that people forget what the film is really about. She was scared and happy and funny and delightful and spunky and emotional and solid.
Audrey Hepburn was a gift from God. I mean, she just was the loveliest, most gracious, darling, darling lady.
And I think it's a film that she's become so identified with. It's become a classic. When you talk of Audrey Hepburn, the first thing you think of is Breakfast at Tiffany's.
The first day of the film, we were shooting the first scene in the movie, which is when the taxi cab pulls up to the curb in front of Tiffany's at 57th and 5th Avenue.
Came the time to shoot, and it was as though God said, well, I'm going to give you a break now, but for the rest of your career, you're just going to have to live off of this one. And nobody appeared, no cars, no people. It was suddenly deserted. With the sweep of his hand, you know, C.B. DeMille wiped out the whole traffic situation, and we had our shot.
Do you mind if I just get in with you for a minute? It's all right. Really it is. We're friends, that's all. We are friends, aren't we?
George had a great physical presence. I think it worked well for the two. Because he still had a lot of that innocence that I think made it attractive to her.
We liked each other as human beings. He admired me greatly, I found out, as a director, and what I did in that film. And I didn't want him in the movie. If you would ask me, and I hope you don't,
Trailers. Visita mi
that,
canal.
you know, would I cast him now? I doubt I would. He just didn't have whatever it was that I wanted. He wasn't my cup of tea, and yet I loved him. We had great times.
Well, I want to tell you, I'd worked with him at the Actors Studio, and we'd gotten along superbly. I really loved him. I mean, he was divine to me and flirted with me, and it was so good, you know. And I was so thrilled to be doing this film with him. Well, he had been spoiled, and he wanted things as he wanted them, and I had dominated him a lot more in the script, and he didn't want to be seen in that condition.
I'll tell you what, Paul. I am a very stylish girl.
What are you doing?
Writing a check. Don't look so bewildered. Surely you've noticed me writing checks before. You're entitled to a vacation with pay.
We wanted somebody who was no nonsense, who could play that kind of, you know, strong, subterranean sexual role, which is what she does. And I don't recall we ever had any problem getting her to play the part because she was a fan of Audrey's, and it was a very good role.
You're Holly's father?
Her name ain't Holly. She was Lula Mae Barnes. Was till she married me. I'm her husband, Doc Golightly.
What can you say about Buddy? Buddy is Buddy. He's an old vaudeville hoofer. It was a brilliant bit of casting.
I don't know whether Buddy Ebsen was Blake's idea or whether it was the casting director's idea, but, you know, I remember he came and read the scene that they play on the park. We just heard, you know, 5 lines, and we all knew that was right.
Mr. Golightly, once again, I must protest. If you don't stop with that phonograph right this minute, I'm going to go to the police department. Yeah, well, that's more better.
In spite of the fact that Blake was a very good friend of Mickey Rooney's, I don't think you would ever have cast Mickey Rooney to play a Japanese person. You'd have had a real Japanese actor, and I don't mind saying that at one point I wanted to replace him.
I didn't really think it out, and I'm not sure it would have changed my mind anyway. And certainly at that time when I did it, nobody criticized it. I thought it was perfectly okay. Looking back, I wish I had never done it.
Not my favorite part. Though I do, as I say, I think Mickey's a wonderful, wonderful actor.
And I would give anything to be able to recast it. But it's there, and onward and upward.
So, my darling Fred, I have tonight made a very serious decision.
And what is that?
No longer will I play the field.
Congratulations.
The field stinks, both economically and socially.
Audrey and I specifically never had a disagreement that I can remember. People would advise Audrey, and we would rehearse one night, and she'd come back the next day and do something totally different. And I finally took her aside and said, hey, there's only one director. He may not be the best, but that's what you got. And you either go along with what we agree on together, or you got to get another director. And that it changed right then. And she relied on me from that moment on. It was easy to spot what she was doing. And she was some kind of spectacular lady.
I'll buy a drink. You drink?
Yeah.
I'll buy a drink.
Okay.
George Axelrod wrote the brilliant script, but the cocktail party was pure Blake Edwards.
He called me one day and he said, I'm going over to the set because I'm going to do this crazy party sequence, and I'm just going to play around and see what I can use.
The script itself didn't delineate that much in terms of party shenanigans, and that meant that I was going to have to invent it.
But we just walked around seeing what kind of crazy madness we could create. They had the one thing where he was on the floor crawling to get the telephone that was ringing that was in a suitcase, you know, things like that.
Actually, in the party sequence, a lot of it was choreographed, I think, as they went along.
And I ordered up champagne, and we had a party. And I told him that. I got him around, and I said, you know, now you're going to help me out, see if you can come up with stuff. And knowing actors, and everybody was going to come up with something at that point, and did. And out of that, I selected a lot of stuff. It led me into a lot of stuff that I thought was fun and creative.
I remember that he would walk by me and he'd say, what am I going to do with you? And about the second or third day, he comes by and he said, I know. He said, you're always laughing, so I'm going to put you in front of a mirror and you can laugh your head off.
Then he dreamed up a crazy thing with another actor, and he said, why don't you two, I'm going to do a big close-up, and you two be arguing. And he didn't tell us what about. And in the middle of our argument, he pulls up the patch and didn't need it, so it was just kind of a crazy moment.
And then, 2 or 3 days later, he said, you know, by now I think she might have a crying jag. I said, yeah. And he said, okay, go for it.
And we really just had a party. Had it been otherwise, I think it would have taken 2 weeks. And it didn't take anything like that.
You heartbreaker, wherever you're going, I'm going your way too.
Well, I was really quite amazed that she was able to pull that off. I didn't know she sang. Nobody knew.
See the world, there's such a lot of world to see.
When I saw the film for the first time with an audience, we were in preview, and the head of the company then said, well, I'll tell you one thing, we can get rid of that song. Fortunately, Audrey stood and said, over my dead body,
Huckleberry friend, Moon River, and me.
Aquí tus trailers. Visita mi canal.
One of my favorite scenes is the last scene, you know, with the cat.
Whew, boy, did that cat smell. Get that cat wet, and that's not easy when you've got the lights pouring down on you and you can hardly breathe anyway, and then you bring the cat in and she's got it in the rain and right up her nose. It was awful.
What makes it still an important movie is, I think, it's the romanticism of the film and the relationship, and when Audrey is the most vulnerable, and when George Peppard talks to her, when she's going to run away, that last scene in the taxi, and then when she goes and finds the cat and they're all hugging in the rain. I'm an old romantic, I guess, but that's my favorite part of the picture.
It just gets into your soul, gets into your heart, may even get into your tears.
I don't think there would be anyone that could ever follow Audrey Hepburn in any role, because, I mean, she was unique.
She always had a spark of humor and be able to deliver that kind of kooky little attitude. But it's a movie everybody can identify with. I think a lot of people have that kookiness, whether they let it show or not, you know. I think a lot of people wanted to be Audrey Hepburn in Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Because she had a way of showing us who she really was. She really made you look into her soul. And you see it whether she played a princess or a nun or a flower girl or Holly Golightly.
She just had a grace and a beauty and a charm that I can't think of anyone else like her. And yet with it there was a sweetness and a vulnerability. She was just delightful.
What was she really like? And the lovely answer is that she really was like what you saw on the screen. She really was that way.
I think that movie was made like a classic. I really think that everything Blake does becomes a classic.
I got real lucky. I like to think that I added a lot to those things, like the party. That certainly wasn't written the way I shot it. And so we complemented each other, everyone, kind of.
I think at the end of the day, the picture is famous not so much because of what Audrey was as a human being, but because she represented something that I think women care about.
It's kind of movies like they don't make anymore. I think that's part of its magic for today as well. And we should make more films like that.
To me, Audrey's look is interesting in that she is not a classic beauty. And yet if you look at her, she's extraordinary.
I had always idolized Audrey. She made things that weren't sexy just by maximizing her ballerina style.
Audrey became very aware of what her type of body needed. She was, believe it or not, extremely modest, and she didn't think that she was shaped very well.
I think Audrey created a stir and such an impact on society because, frankly, we'd never seen anyone who looked like her. She was a gamine, she was a little bit boyish, but she was feminine. And prior to that, in terms of what was acceptable in terms of Hollywood starlets, was this very blousy, obvious Jane Mansfield, Marilyn Monroe, big skirts, big hair, big chests.
Well, you know, back then, she was described as scrawny and boyish and sort of ill-proportioned, but now it's sort of become like the ideal.
She was gorgeous, but not in an obvious way. I can say this because I cared about her. She had the biggest feet of any girl I've ever seen. She was more or less flat-chested, but everything about her just made her beyond sexy.
Edith had for Roman Holiday, put her in the cute little blouse and the flared skirt. Well, she threw on the little scarf and the belt, so she was really good at accessorizing.
Audrey had a great eye, and she knew what was going on in Paris and the French couturier, and she discovered a young designer who was not quite that well known yet, Hubert de Givenchy.
When he first met her, he thought he was meeting Katharine Hepburn. And so when she walked in, she was picking a couple dresses for her role in Sabrina, and he was like, "I don't have time to meet with you, mademoiselle."
And she begged him, she said, "Just let me go look and see what was in the racks from the last season." And she picked out 3 pieces. And those 3 pieces she wore in Sabrina, and they became iconographic. And from then on, she and Givenchy worked together for the rest of her life.
He had, prior to having met her, really been designing for her silhouette, the gazelle-like creatures that the ideal model is. So the things that he showed her without having designed them for her when she first went to him were absolutely perfect for her.
My friends, you saw and hear a waif, a gamin, a lowly caterpillar. We open the cocoon, but it is not a butterfly that emerges. It's not. It is a bird of paradise. Lights!
I think that what those clothes signified for her were more than just a fashion. They were sort of an armor of love, if you can call it that, something that enabled her to be appropriately dressed, which she believed in.
I think it's very unusual to be able to find a creator and a muse that have the same vision. And those two did, which is really unusual.
How could I be a model? I have no illusions about my looks. I think my face is funny.
I always like to say she was the perfect package of imperfections. She viewed herself as too thin, a bump on her nose, feet too big for her size, whatever. Of course, she had none of those things, but that's what she saw. And I think that is really the definition of beauty, is not knowing that you are so special. That's what makes you accessible.
I think that's one thing that appeals to women, that they look at her and she's not the cookie-cutter blonde, but they know that she's still beautiful. And it's that unique quality that takes her to the top of the list every year, even today.
As a designer, you know, you can't help but design things that you want to wear. You know, as a woman designer, I guess I sort of selfishly design things for myself, and I sort of feel like I, you know, have her body a little bit and, you know, have never really had the curves that I wanted, you know, so I think she has been a great inspiration in that way to just sort of maximize what you have and be comfortable and confident with that.
She believed always in underdressing rather than overdressing. She always used to say to us, better be the only one in a blazer at a black tie event than the only one in a black tie, you know, at a casual event.
And she always bought her shoes a half a size too big because she thought that they'd last longer and they look better if you're not cramming your foot into them. And that's just not something that you think of a diva. That's very practical, it's very real. And sticking to that philosophy is what makes your look work.
The way she looked was so much who she was that there was no separation between the woman and her clothes.
So designers today, even now, if they see something they like, a really clean look, a modern look, a look that works, they'll say, oh, that's so Audrey. So it's almost an adjective, a shorthand to that kind of clean American, yet sophisticated style that always looks fabulous and always works.
I'm nothing. A creature of the streets with a police record as long as your arm. He had me paroled just for this, to be the luscious and irresistible bait squirming on the end of the hook he has prepared.
The clothes that made her feel most comfortable were polo shirts and jeans. In fact, that's what she wore, I would say, 90% of the time. That's what she wore at home, that's what she wore on our UNICEF missions.
No matter when you see Audrey Hepburn, whether it's, you know, with the Gigi years or at the end when she was with UNICEF, she looks the same. You know, maybe it's like a cute little polo shirt, capris, cowl neck, but it's the same basic shapes and the same basic colors, black, tan. She didn't really go for a lot of prints. And so she's just this true icon to simplicity and to knowing what works with your body and sticking with it.
It was a way to say, in a way, don't look at me. How interesting that everybody did.
I believe that the people, especially women, were intrigued by her style, her elegance, because they sensed it to be a manifestation of her total essence.
She was so genuine in every part of her life, and her clothing and her style, she just genuinely loved clothes. And so it was sort of a natural thing to become a style icon.
I mean, Audrey is, I would say, out of the 20th century, she really is the style icon, and everyone else just follows in her wake.
You see a little bit of Audrey in a lot of people, but you don't really see anybody who's being their own Audrey. And to really be a new Audrey, you have to be an individual. So maybe she's cast too big of a shadow.
Audrey Hepburn was not only the First Lady of Tiffany, but she was tremendously helpful and kind to me in discussing the image and how she felt about Tiffany and Company and her love for Tiffany. And when the time came that I was writing the 150th anniversary book for Tiffany that would come out in 1987, I thought, wouldn't that be wonderful if she would comment on her feelings for Tiffany in the book? So I called her in Stad and said, would she consider, writing a little something as a preface to the book? And Audrey said, yes, John, I'll call you back. And the very next morning, the phone rang, and rather early, as obviously it's much later in Switzerland than New York. And this voice said, John? I said, yes, good morning. This is Audrey. I'm sitting out on my terrace and I've written something. Maybe you'd like to hear it. I said, yes, Audrey, of course I'd like to hear it. She said, well, I hope it will do. It's what I've written for the preface for the book. And I brought her letter. It's so charming, and I think it not only sums up what she thought of Tiffany and Company, but what it really has a lot to do with the essence of Tiffany and why we have been so successful over the years. And there's her letter. Isn't her handwriting wonderful? Dear Tiffany, a thing of beauty is a joy forever. That is why the luster of the art of Tiffany's remains undimmed. For 150 years, your name has stood for beauty, style, quality, and constancy. You have brightened our lives with your jewelry, illuminated our homes with your lamps, brought a glow to our tables with your silver and given distinction to our lives. You certainly have to mind by inviting me to breakfast. How many can say that they had coffee and croissants at Tiffany's? A memory I shall always cherish. Happy birthday, dear T, with love, but also with envy, for after 150 years you don't have a wrinkle. But then class doesn't age. Your devoted friend, Audrey Hepburn.
Don't you just love it?
Love what?
Tiffany's.
Tiffany's came into existence in 1837 with a young man from Connecticut, Charles Lewis Tiffany, whose family was in the dry goods and cotton business in Connecticut. And the first day's receipts in September of that year, when they opened at the end of September, were a wonderful $4.95.
Their first store was down at 259 Broadway. They have moved 6 times. As society moved uptown, Tiffany moved uptown, and they relocated at the corner of 5th Avenue and 57th Street in 1940.
Isn't it wonderful? Do you see what I mean? How nothing bad could ever happen to you in a place like this? It isn't that I give a hoot about jewelry, except diamonds, of course. Like that.
Charles Lewis Tiffany knew that the diamonds were very much a symbol of his company, and so when this great canary yellow diamond was discovered in South Africa in 1877, he bought it and it was sent to Paris to be cut.
And then it was cut to 128.54 carats with 90 facets to maximize its brilliance. It's a canary-colored diamond, and at the time it was the largest canary diamond in existence. It measures 1 inch by 1 inch, and it has wonderful brilliance.
There are only 2 people who have ever worn the Tiffany diamond, and of course Audrey Hepburn was one of those 2 people at the time of the filming of Breakfast at Tiffany, and they're very charming photographs of her looking very happy to be wearing, you know, the most famous American diamond.
No, I'm going to buy you a present. You bought me one, a typewriter ribbon, and it brought me luck.
All right, but Tiffany's can be pretty expensive.
I've got my check and $10.
Oh, I wouldn't let you cash a check. But a present for $10 or under, that I'll accept. Of course, I don't exactly know what we're going to find at Tiffany's for $10.
The Tiffany setting has become the traditional setting for engagement rings because it does maximize the brilliance of the stone. You can see into the stone from underneath. It holds the stone away from the setting, and it makes it, to me, it makes it more beautiful.
Now it's the standard setting for a diamond, the 6-prong setting, but that was devised by Mr. Tiffany and his gemologists in 1887 and presented to the world. Before that, diamonds were set in what were called crown settings, which set them rather low and very little light got into them.
When you get a little blue box tied with a white satin ribbon, and it's what people, when they see that blue box, they understand that. It has become famous because Tiffany's has maintained the quality of the items that are inside, so that blue box symbolizes what Tiffany was and still is.
The facets, so to speak, of Tiffany's talents and adventures in the world are very many, and of course Tiffany has been very associated with the presidents of the United States and the government in Washington. Abraham Lincoln was one of our clients, President Grant was one of our clients, and right up to John F. Kennedy.
In the late 19th century, the U.S. government realized that they wanted to update the Great Seal of the United States. And James Whitehouse, who was an engraver for Tiffany's, redesigned the Great Seal of the United States.
Do you think Tiffany's would really engrave it for us? I mean, you don't think they would feel it was beneath them or anything like that?
Well, it is rather unusual, madam. But I think you'll find that Tiffany's is very understanding. If you will tell me what initials you would like, I think we could have something ready for you in the morning.
Didn't I tell you this was a lovely place?
everyone thinks of Tiffany as an American institution and very much their Tiffany and Company, that it's not my Tiffany, it's not our Tiffany and Company. No, it's the American people's institution, it's their Tiffany and Company. And because it has had its hand in so many of the events of the United States and still does today.
Since Tiffany was one of the largest silver makers in this country, a lot of the sports enthusiasts, those who sponsored races, etc., came to Tiffany's, such as in the 1850s, early 1860s.
Today we make the Super Bowl trophy, the Vince Lombardi Super Bowl trophy since 1967, and the NBA trophy, and NASCAR, and of course the World Series. Let's not forget that, the World Series trophy.
Tiffany's has continued their high level of quality, and in everything that they design, from a small little pair of earrings to an important diamond necklace, they're interested in quality, so that anyone who comes into their store and buys something feels that they are getting this quality.
Someone said one day, "What's Tiffany about?" when our wonderful publicist, the great fashion impresario Eleanor Lambert, was standing next to me. And she said, "It's fun to dream. That's what it's about. It's fun to dream. It's romantic to dream. That's what Tiffany is about."